And there's even stuff I have in my files, which I guess I'll just drop here, even though it probably should be a whole separate series or video. I'm just so bored with this grifter that I can't be bothered. You know, it's just after you document the, fifth or sixth thing, it's kind of hard to get excited about it. But I'll put it here. Did you guys ever hear of when he promoted this crypto coin called OMI?
What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Collectors Gone Digital. My name is Josh, and on today's episode, we are going to be covering Coffeezilla's most recent video on Logan Paul and OMI. So I'm not wasting any time with today's intro. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So over the weekend, I was sitting on a space with VeVe, and a thumbnail popped up in my Twitter feed from Coffeezilla talking about another scam. And lo and behold, Logan was one of the people in this thumbnail. So I took some time to review the video. I have some interesting thoughts on it. I don't think that this was a typical Coffeezilla video, and I'll explain in a couple minutes why. At least with regards to the token. So first off, I want to talk about a blatant lie that Logan was just caught in, and Coffee calls him right out for it, which I love. By the way, guys, I am a Coffee fan, and I do actually largely agree with the narrative of his video. But for those who are not aware, Logan was actually seen talking about OMI back in, I believe it was 2021, it may have been 2020, and this was on his Impulsive podcast with a gentleman named Chase Hero.
OMI, I think, is like another one.
Bro.
Am I good?
What are you saying? You have the same weird little coins that no one's ever heard of yet as me.
Let's
You
go.
you have OMI?
Yeah, bro.
Shut the f up.
So Chase brings up the token, Logan acts surprised that all of a sudden he's holding the token like they've never discussed it before. Mike, Logan's co-host beside him, brings up a comment saying that, oh, you guys must have talked about this beforehand, and Logan and Chase pretty much deny that. Chase actually even says, and I have it circled right there, on my kids, we never discussed it beforehand, which is crazy.
But that reaction was so fake that even their co-host, Mike, who's Logan's whipping boy, can't help but be skeptical that this was all a little too rehearsed.
But I want a bunch of that because I like that one. Pokemon.
Y'all definitely talked about this.
No, on my
so
kids.
On my kids, we've never talked about this.
You can see the look of disappointment in Logan, like the guilt. That's the same frame, by the way. I didn't cut those on top of each other. You can see in his body language, he can't even give him eye contact. Now, the reason why I say this is a lie is because beforehand, Chase and Logan are seen sending a video to Ben. And when I say Ben, I mean Ben Gadenzi. So Coffee then follows this up with some screenshots of a conversation between Chase and Ben, where Chase sends a message to Ben before the podcast saying he's going to be pushing the token hard on his socials, and in this case, he's referring to OMI.
Yo, Ben, we need some more of these Akomis.
Please, bro, please. EOD, if possible.
Yep.
Because we have an episode going tomorrow where we talk very highly of OMI, and I wouldn't be surprised if that caused some traction.
Let's go.
OMI a wagon.
Let's go.
The podcast then goes live, Chase and Logan pump the token, and again, while denying that they've spoken about it beforehand. Now, with regards to some of those screenshots, Chase is seen communicating with Ben. Ben worked for OMI and VeVe, or still does. I don't actually know his current status. But the conversation suggests that Ben made a private deal with Chase. So the very first message in the conversation that we can see is Ben responding to Chase saying, "You tell me when, I'm so down." So we don't exactly know what that's referring to, but obviously it sounds like something was proposed to Chase beforehand. Ben says, "I'll see if Monday works, just heading to the track today." Now, to be clear, that $852,000 was not sent by Chase. It does say "you" above it, so whoever took this screenshot, I think, was the one who had sent that money. But regardless, somebody sent $852,752 prior to the podcast dropping. Chase is then asked when the podcast is going to be live, to which he then responds saying that he'll send him the link once it's up, and that he'll be pushing it hard on his socials as well. And then it looks like Chase responds to the previous message with the $852,000 transaction, saying, "Let me know when sent." So now that you guys understand what was covered in the video, I want to talk about how Coffee kind of discussed the OMI token and how it kind of differs from the videos that he normally puts out. So first off, I don't even know if Coffee knows that the token is tied to VeVe, but there was no mention of the VeVe app or project in any way. Now, because there was no deep dive into who the company is, there was no discussion around what the project offers. And more so, there was no mention of who backs the project, either brands or team, members like Al Khan. So I was thinking before I watched the video, and I actually even said this on the Twitter space, that I really hope that this isn't a video where he just points where the token was then versus now. And essentially that's what the video was. There was no understanding or explanation behind what the actual project was. And that to me struck me as very odd, because Coffee is typically somebody who dives deep into that stuff. More on this later in the episode. So with that being said, the focus for the video was really just on Logan and Chase. You know, Logan is somebody who has been associated with a lot of scams, and I'm not the biggest fan of the man myself, but I understand how, you know, Coffee, keeping in mind that Coffee has done investigations on Logan before with projects like CryptoZoo. I understand how he can look at the guy and go, oh, this is just another crypto project that he's tried to pump and dump. In fact, he may have actually tried to do that. Like, I don't actually know. I don't know if he stole his tokens or if he sold at the high. But what I'm trying to get at here is that, you know, it's much harder to portray a narrative for a video, right? Pointing out things like Logan is a scammer, he's backed a bunch of crypto projects that have ultimately failed. Here's another one, right? Making points like that, only to follow it up with stuff like, oh, and by the way, the world's largest brands back this company, right? Coffee can't go, oh, and the project is backed by some sketchy dude like SBF. So I think in this case, he focused on points that help support his argument while ignoring other points that might not make his argument look as strong. He clearly focused on conversations around these two, and then that's why people like Ben got brought into the mix. But to me, it was clear that Coffee did not do adequate research on the project, on the project's offerings, or our community. I do hesitate in saying community a little bit here because, you know, I'm well aware of a lot of crypto projects that have had strong communities that have failed. And that's just ultimately because, you know, they were promised things that were just ultimately not true, or the community didn't do enough research on the founders. But what he was ultimately saying about OMI, you can say for so many other legitimate crypto projects, including Bitcoin. The all-time high for Bitcoin was around the same time that the all-time high for OMI was. And I don't know what it was in USD, but it was around 81,000 Canadian. What's it at now? Like 28 or something like that? Way lower. So as I mentioned before, it was a little unusual that Coffee didn't dive, you know, deep like he normally does into his other investigations. But I do think that OMI was kind of brought up in this case as a talking point to drive a larger narrative. And I'm not saying that narrative was untrue, but it was simply a then versus now token comparison. There was no explanation behind why the token has performed the way that it has.
This is the price chart of OMI. The dot on the left is where they told you to buy. The miserable line down is where we are now. OMI is down 99%.
So like I said, it's not that the narrative was untrue, because I do think that Logan has been involved with a lot of projects that have just gone to zero. But I do think points were left out to strengthen Coffee's argument for his video. So what points were left out? And I understand that this was not a video on OMI, it was a video on Logan, but I want to discuss some things for those who may be concerned about the token. So first off, you got to consider market conditions. You know, overall sentiment towards NFTs and just crypto in general has gone down. As a result of this, we have a lower user base on the platform, but also for anyone who has been with the platform for a little while now, I'm just going to fast track down to the bottom point here. We did start with a smaller team who underestimated how fast the platform would gain traction. So they were forecasting 60,000 users by end of first year. They had 1.1 active million users, but the question is, how many of those were legitimate users versus non-legitimate users, aka bots? So that has also resulted in a lower user base. The merging of accounts would have also contributed to this. Now, new regulations forming in the crypto space have also resulted in companies having to restructure. So restructure internally, but some companies have actually had to go back to their home countries because these regulations have put a pause on their foreign operations. We're also going to have the Russia-Ukraine war, which is very unfortunate. That's unfortunately still going, but obviously worldwide sanctions cause many issues for many different types of markets. We've experienced delayed timelines, but I do want to point out not abandoned timelines. Okay, so there hasn't been really anything that comes to my mind where VeVe said they're going to do this and then just completely went a 180. The one thing that does come to mind is buybacks, but that was because of legal reasons that they had to change that. What they say they're going to do is what they typically end up doing. It's just delayed. Whatever timeline they end up telling you, just push it back, 3 to 6 months. Now, speaking of delayed timelines, we have also had internal delays with design studios near Ukraine. So I don't know if anybody remembers, but David did mention that they had to switch design studios because the studio near Ukraine was, I'm assuming, being affected by the war. He didn't actually say that part, but I think it was kind of implied. And then, as I mentioned before, they completely underestimated how fast the platform would gain traction. So they did originally have issues with scaling. They didn't necessarily have the proper infrastructure in place. And so there was a lot of times where the app would crash, you couldn't reload it, and just a bunch of problems. So there are many reasons that explain why the token has performed the way that it has. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can also pull up many legitimate crypto projects that are in the same exact boat. Now, I'm hoping those points kind of clear up some things for those who may be concerned about the token. I am very curious to know your thoughts and opinions on the video for those who did watch it, so make sure to comment down below. But to sum things up and to make a longer story short, no, I am not concerned. I do think that there was a lack of understanding around the topic being discussed. And if I am wrong there, and he did research the topic extensively, then he purposefully chose to withhold that information. There's many points to support why the token has performed the way that it has, and there's many points to support the legitimacy of the project, many that I didn't even discuss in this video. So if you guys do agree, I would really appreciate it if you could share the video, and then that way we can get as many opinions as we can. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.